Welcome back to another episode of Barbecue and Bottles, and today we're going to be doing another steak experiment video that's a follow-up to two previous videos we've done on how to salt your steak. The first of those was really popular and it led to a follow-up video. There were lots of questions in that video around whether dry brining dries out your steak, which one's actually better. So today we're going to be doing a 48-hour dry brine, a 24-hour dry brine, just like Guga does, and then we'll season this one an hour before we put it on the grill. We're gonna show you the salts we use. We're gonna measure the weights along the way just so we can determine how much moisture, if any, is lost out of the steak. And we'll give you our preference right at the end. So stick around if you wanna know which of these methods is the best way to salt your steak. Okay, to start with, we've gone to our butcher and we've got 3 steaks that are roughly the same size. These are 1.25 inches thick. And just to prove that, we're gonna get out our tape measure here. You can see 1.25 inches, 1.25 inches, 1.25 inches. This one's maybe a touch thinner, but they're all roughly the same size because we want to eliminate that element from the experiment. These are all ribeyes. These are beautiful grain-fed ribeyes. You can see the marbling all the way through these. Just a really, really nice level of marbling. So onto the salts that we're gonna be using. The salt that we normally use is Maldon, which is a fleur de sel. It's really, really beautiful and crystally. This is a perfect finishing salt. If we're gonna be doing a traditional 48-hour dry brine, this is what we'll use. If you're doing a 24-hour dry brine, you can do the same. But these have really large crystals in them. And those crystals, if you're seasoning a steak an hour before you hit the grill, won't have time to fully melt and absorb into the steak. So because of that, we're gonna use our Diamond Crystal Kosher Salt. This is a much finer kosher crystal salt that will absorb really quickly, and we just wanted to use the same salt across all 3 steaks to eliminate that variable. Now, how much salt are we gonna use? We've got our little weigh scale here. So this weighs about 178 grams. So what we're gonna do is season up this steak here. We'll weigh it again, see how much salt that we used, and then we'll use the same amount of salt on the other 2 steaks. Again, we're just trying to eliminate variables in this experiment. So now we're just gonna take a pinch of salt and sprinkle it on, go in from nice and high so that that salt diffuses nice and evenly throughout your steak. Pat that down, flip it over. We'll do the same on the other side. Beautiful. Now we're gonna get the edges with whatever salt is left over here. Perfect, beautifully seasoned up. And we're just gonna move this over to the cooling rack. Now we're gonna weigh this on the scale again. And we've got 172 grams. So that means we used 6 grams of salt. All right, now we're gonna weigh the steak itself. And this is gonna be our baseline measurement to see if there's any moisture that's lost through this process. So 513 grams, that's a little over a full pound. We'll take note of this. So I'm just gonna move these off to the cutting board so we can vacuum seal those. And we've got this one on the cooling rack over top of the aluminum baking tray. Now we'll just get this into the fridge for 48 hours. It's in there right next to a monster prime rib that we've got. We're gonna do another one of those on the channel here pretty soon. All right, so we've got our little food saver machine here. Then we'll cut off that bag. Now we'll make a sealable bag here pretty quickly. Perfect. Now we'll get our steak in here and we'll vac seal up the other side. Great, now we got our vac sealed steaks here. We're gonna get these back in the fridge. And now we'll see you back here in 24 hours to salt the next steak. So it's 24 hours later, ready to start brining our second steak here. But just quickly, taking a look at the first steak, you can see it's just an absolutely beautiful red color. The surface is already starting to dry. Just look at that. Really stunning. All of the salt has already reabsorbed back into that steak. Now for the 24-hour dry brine. So we used 6 grams of salt on the last steak. So we're just gonna put our salt jar here back on top. So 171 grams, that means we need to get down to 165. So we're just gonna slowly take out some salt and season this steak until we're back down to 165. Now I think you're gonna be really surprised with the outcome on this experiment. So stick with us right through to the end here. All right, we'll get that seasoned up, turn it over, get the other side here. Perfect, there we go. Now we're just gonna get the edges and take up what's left on the cutting board here. Great, now we've got almost all of the salt on the steak. So now I'm just gonna transfer this. So this is coming in at 535 grams here on the scale. So this is almost the same weight as the previous steak. We'll get this onto the cooling rack and we're good to go. Now I'll put this back in the fridge and we'll see you in 24 hours for the cook. So if you're looking for something to do while your steaks are dry brining, consider smashing the like button. It's a really easy way to support our channel. It helps with the YouTube algorithm. So if you could just take a second, smash that like button right down below, we'd really appreciate it. All right, it's day 3, the best of the days, because today we actually get to grill these beauties up. Now we're gonna salt our steak that we're just gonna be seasoning an hour before we grill. I'll get this steak out. Done. All right, so we used 6 grams of salt on these other steaks. So we're gonna do the same thing here, which means 159 grams is what we're looking to finish with. Now, a really important point here is while we're using 6 grams of salt, this is our salt preference. If you don't like this much salt, then put as much salt in these dry brines as you want on your steak. There's nothing that says 6 grams is the right amount. It's just however much we use. So please keep that in mind. The salt that you're using for your dry brine is the seasoning for your steak to go on the grill, so you don't need to add any more salt to it than this. We'll make sure that we get all the extra salt here with the edges of the steak to the best we can. Okay, now we're gonna let this rest on the cooling rack here for an hour. We've got all of these steaks out an hour before they're gonna hit the grill so that they can warm up to room temperature, and that should just help us get a nice even medium rare from edge to edge. Now we're gonna weigh each of these steaks just to see how much moisture was lost through the dry brining process. All right, we're gonna measure this steak here first. And that's 420 grams or 14.8 ounces. So that one is a little bit lighter than the other steaks. This steak here, this was 513 grams with the salt before the dry brining process started. So let's see just how much weight that actually lost. That's 13 grams less than when we started the dry brine process. Now, just to give you a sense of how much moisture that represents, steaks or any muscle fibers to begin with are about 70% moisture. So that means on a 500 gram steak, you've got almost 350 grams worth of moisture. We've lost 13 grams, practically nothing. This is an interesting experiment for us. Now let's check out the 24-hour brine steak. This guy is weighing in at 529 grams. This started off at 536 grams, so we're really dealing with 7 grams. So if you look at the amount of time that it was in the fridge relative to the amount of moisture that it's lost, it's actually pretty close to this one. It lost half of the moisture, but it was in the fridge half of the time. Now with these guys all measured up, we're gonna wait an hour, let these warm up to room temp, and then head out to the grill. Now we're outside, time to fire up the Kamado. You'll see here we're using the big green egg charcoal. We're just gonna fill up the basket. We've got a really full basket here. And frankly, I don't know how impressed I am with this big green egg charcoal. It feels like the regular big block Kamado Joe charcoal that I get is a little bit bigger, and these just feel like smaller chunks. So now to light this up, we've got the Burns-O-Matic propane lighter. We'll fire up our charcoal. Now that we got a couple spots of charcoal ignited here, we're gonna close down the lid and we'll get our vent set for grilling at about 225 to 250. All right, we're dialed in at our desired temperature of 225 here. So now to prep the Kamado for the steaks. So the first step's just a little hack I've been working with here recently, and when I don't have wood chunks, I just sprinkle on a few of the hickory wood pellets from Traeger. So we just have our pellet grill, we sprinkle on some of those wood pellets, and that'll just bring a really nice rich smokiness, that hickory flavor to our cook. All right, next we're gonna get our gloves on here. These gloves are absolutely incredible. If you need to play around with your charcoal, if you're using a hot cast iron pan, if you're dealing with fire logs, you can just reach in, touch them. They're rated to a super high degree. Now we'll get in the slow roller system. You can already see the smoke from those pellets starting to come through here. And then we'll set up the actual grill grate itself. All right, we've got our steaks ready to go. The grill's hot. Boom, look at that smoke. It's a beautiful smoke. We're set up here for an indirect cook. So that's what we're gonna do with a reverse sear at the end. So we've got our steaks on. We've got our 48-hour steak, our 24, and our 1 hour. Now, for our temps, we're just gonna get our grate temp here set up. We wanna make sure, even though we've got the temp in the hood, that we're actually running at our desired temps here. Now we'll put our temp probe into the steak in the middle here, and we'll make sure that gets in nice and thick, just so that we can make sure that we're monitoring the internal temp from the middle of that steak. All right, now close the lid down and let the magic happen. So the steaks have just hit an internal temp of 110 here, as you can see. So we're gonna get the steaks off and resting while we then get the grill ripping hot for a sear. Just look at how beautiful those steaks look. Just gorgeous. Have a really nice red color from that smoke, both from the charcoal and the hickory pellets that we put on here. Now, with our glove, we'll just pull the temp probes off here. Now get our steaks transitioned off. Got our 48-hour, our 24-hour, and of course, our 1 hour before. Now to get the grill set up for the sear, we're just gonna remove this piece, get our slow roller off here. Now we'll go back with the grill grates, but what we're gonna do is replace one of these wire grates with a cast iron grate. We're gonna move this down one level lower as well here, just like that. Now we're gonna leave the lid here cracked a bit just to make sure we get maximum airflow and really help to ignite this. It should take us about 5 to 10 minutes before this is ripping hot and just ready to sear those steaks. So now we're gonna set our steaks down here on this cast iron grate, and we'll do the final sear off. Now this sear here is just to give it a nice crust. We're gonna try and bring the internal temp up to 128 when we're finished here. So this won't take long, maybe 60 seconds each side, and then we'll flip them over and hit them with the heat on the other side as well. All right, we're gonna flip these guys over here. Nice little crust forming, looking great. You can see the fat and the marbling rendering down. Get a little bit of that char, that burnt flavor. But we've really got that flame ripping hot here now. No, we'll flip this back over. We don't want to singe these too badly, so we'll just flip them back and forth here a couple times until we hit our internal of 128. Flip them over again. Make sure we're getting these nice and even. Just look at that. Just gonna move this off to the side here and check the temp. All right, so this steak is done and ready to go. So is this one. We'll give this steak here, oh, such a beautiful color and look. Just look at that. All right, it's off. We're ready to head inside. Okay, we've got these bad boys inside. They're resting. Now what we'd normally be doing right now is just putting on a dollop of compound butter, but because we're just trying to isolate for the taste difference associated with the brining method, we're not gonna do that here. But we'll drop a link down in the description below if you wanna check out our compound butter recipe. You just put a nice little quarter or a couple quarter sizes of that compound butter on here, and it'll just melt over that 10-minute rest period, and it'll be absolutely beautiful. Instead, what we're gonna do, we're gonna weigh these steaks. I wanna see how much moisture we actually lost over the cooking process. We're gonna start off with our 48-hour dry brine. So this is 434 grams. We were 503 grams after it came out of the fridge from that 48-hour brine, so we've lost a lot. Now, we're gonna go on with the 24-hour dry brine. That's 451. And now, the 1 hour before steak. That's at 371. So doing the math here, this is actually a little bit of a surprise. So the 48-hour dry brine, we lost about 13% of its mass, which would have been all moisture through the cook. For the 24-hour dry brine, we lost about 15. And then for the 1 hour before, we lost about 12. So that's actually a pretty interesting result. And what I'd say is the main conclusion is this is all just a rounding error here. I mean, the percentages are so close, there's no way the brining process actually makes any kind of difference on how wet or moist or juicy your steak is. So these have been resting for 10 minutes. Now is the time to cut in. So we got our 48-hour, our 24-hour, and our 1 hour steak. What we're gonna do is just do a little cross section across each of these, and we'll just do a little comparison there. And man, you can just smell the fact that we used a charcoal grill here. As you know, we've been doing a lot of searing of steaks in cast iron, and I cannot wait to bite into this charcoal. All right, this is the biggest surprise for me. If we look at the 48-hour dry brine steak, the gray band is fairly large. It gets a little bit smaller with the 24-hour dry brine, and it's next to non-existent with the steak that we brined an hour before the cook. That is absolutely incredible. If anybody knows the science behind this, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. This is absolutely a shocker for me. We're gonna cut this up, see if there's a taste difference, but that is an incredible difference just in terms of the evenness and that wall-to-wall medium rare on this steak. Okay, we've got these cut up, and you can see here it's a really nice, even medium rare across all the steaks. It's really just the level of that gray band that exists here. And to be honest, I wouldn't be disappointed if any of these steaks were the only steak that I had coming off the grill. So we are talking about differences that are on the margin here, but let's go in with this steak here first, the 1 hour salted steak. That is really good. You can taste the salt, you can taste the charcoal and the smokiness that came up through that charcoal and the hickory pellets. Really nice steak. Not too much of an actual crunch from the crust, but really, really nice flavor profile. Now for the 24-hour dry brine. Oh, that is so good. So on this steak, I'm gonna say there actually isn't that much of a difference in the taste profile. You might get a little bit more crunch and bite with the crust, and that's just because it was a drier surface when it hit the grill, and so more of that heat could actually go to forming the crust. And we did see that at the start, that the 1 hour salt steak didn't have as good of a crust as the others. But now we're gonna jump into the 48-hour dry brine. I've got a great piece here. The spinalis came off. Pop that in first. All right, folks, so that pretty much wraps it up here. Okay, so on this taste test, I'm gonna give the winner to the steak that we salted 1 hour before. Maybe it's a tie with the 24-hour dry brine, but when we look through the whole package, I think the dry brine steaks that went 24 to 48 hours had a slightly better crust. The best doneness definitely went to the steak that only was salted an hour before. And the taste profile, it was pretty indistinguishable through each of the 3 steaks. So you know what, folks? If you don't have time to do more than a 1 hour brining of your steaks, you're gonna come out with an incredible outcome here. And I was actually really surprised with the outcome on this experiment. So if you like this experiment, leave a comment below, consider subscribing to the channel. because we've got loads more of these steak experiments to come. And we've got a playlist over here of all the steak experiments we've done so far. We've got over 20 if you want to give them a check out. All right, thanks for tuning in.